Hello, this is the Kratom Sobriety Podcast. I'm Charlie, and this is a special Wednesday episode. And today I'm with Cindy. How are you doing, Cindy?
I'm well, thank you, Charlie.
Can you introduce yourself to people?
Yes, my name is Cindy Ross. I live in South Florida. I've lived here 40 years. I'm originally from Ohio, came from a fairly large family, moved down to South Florida, got married, had 3 children. I have 37-year-old twins, boy, girl. And I had Max, who would be 33 today. Now he'd be 33. And I just retired from 40 years in the yachting industry.
Congratulations. That must feel good.
It does. I had a good career, though. I loved every day of it.
Can you tell us more about Max?
Oh, gosh. Let's see. What do I say about Max? Max was sweet. That was the one thing at his service that everybody would come up and say how sweet he was. He was very compassionate. He was the first to jump out of a car if he saw an elderly person needing help or if there's a turtle in the middle of the road. And he was very funny. He was extremely quick-witted, very quick-witted. In fact, after he passed away, quite a few of his friends would send us snippets of videos from parties or get-together where people are just laughing hysterically at different things that Max was saying and his one-liners. Though he had a real diverse set of interests, he was an incredible cook. He was in the culinary program in high school. He could fix anything, your air conditioning, you needed ceiling fans, maintenance. That's what he enjoyed also. He grew up boating in South Florida, so he was the perfect person to take out on a boat trip because if something wasn't working on the boat, he could probably fix that. At the same time, he'd cook all the fish. He was just a real well-rounded person. His real aspirations, though, he wanted to be a stand-up comic. That's what he wanted to do. He would talk about an open mic night, maybe in the local comedy store, and he watched YouTube a lot. He'd watch comedians. He watched cooking shows, backwood cooking shows. He was just really a very interesting person. He put a lot into 30 years.
And did he have a signature dish that he cooked?
I don't know if he had a signature. He liked things spicy. And during COVID, to keep busy, we had container gardens, and he grew all kind of hot peppers. So he would pickle hot peppers, or he'd make dishes with peppers. And that was basically what he liked to do. He made up dishes as he went along. So he's very creative.
Well, I wish we were here for different reasons, but Max died from a kratom-caused death. When was that, and what were the circumstances?
Max passed away December 11th, 2021. I had gone up to South Carolina. It was my sister's 70th birthday, and her daughter was throwing a surprise birthday party. And even though he had been living with me, he'd gone over to his dad's to help with installing ceiling fans, installing a large screen TV. I spoke to him that morning, actually at 12:15. He said his car wasn't working. He was going to go to the mall, an Uber. And I said, when you're at the mall, look for new shoes, because he had just accepted a job as a sous chef in a restaurant to go back to his culinary interests, and he was going to start on the Tuesday. He was very excited about that. So that was at 12:15. He said, I love you. Tell Aunt Gwen happy birthday for me. And that was it. And then a couple hours later, I don't know, call it a mother's instinct, intuition. I had his location on my phone, and I looked, and he was just in this grassy area of our apartment complex. And it wasn't far from the mall, so I thought, okay, maybe he's in the back of the mall. And I just didn't think about it. And then at like 45, 50 minutes, his phone was still there. And I just was like, what? But I thought, God, he's 30, Cindy, just enjoy your sisters, because a couple of my other sisters were there. So we went about the afternoon, and then we were walking, my sisters and I, their little Christmas parade, and my phone rang, and it was my former husband, and he said, who are you with? I said, I'm with my sisters. And he said, I need to tell you that Max is dead or Max has died. And it was so numbing to me. I was so confused. I had no idea what happened. Then I called the police station. I got a detective. He said there has to be an investigation because he's so young. He's found in that grassy area where I saw his phone. That's where he had collapsed. That's how it started everything going from that day.
I guess You were with your sisters, at least. That's the only solace I can find in that situation. Do you know how long Max was taking kratom and what mode and how much he was taking?
Well, I believe I found out about it in 2020. He had a very good friend that opened up a kava bar. 2020 and 2021 were really rough years for anybody, but Max really had anxiety issues, and that stemmed from his ADHD. He was diagnosed at a very young age with ADHD, 8. If he were busy, he would do well, right? Or as well as he could. His mind would be busy. The ADHD would kind of be under control and the anxiety. So during that time, I knew he was lost. The container gardens, how long can you stay inside with your mother with container gardens? So his buddy had a kava bar and he went down to it. And I thought it was just this kava drink. And then I found out that they sold kratom. Max pronounced it kratom. I knew that he'd say that, oh, Mom, it's in the coffee family. It's actually like a tea. They put a teaspoon in, and he'd bring home little baggies of the green powder. And I think that is what he used or preferred. He'd go into places like that, his buddies. So I knew in 2020 he was starting to use it, in 2021 also. I never thought much about it because I just, at that stage, I just counted on the FDA, right? If you can go in someplace and buy it at a gas station, convenience store, kava bars, it must have been checked out.
Yeah.
So when I got a call from the police officer, and they had taken Max's phone, the DEA wanted to look at everything because in South Florida, they're starting to arrest people if they find out who sold like fentanyl or anything like that. He called me up and he said, I need to tell you something. You're going to be really disappointed. This is from a detective. And I said, disappointed? I'm thinking, where is he coming from? Disappointed. I couldn't be any more disappointed. And he said, Max had nothing illegal in his system. He had ethanol and metrogenine. Well, I knew metrogenine was kratom. I go, what? So my head is going around. What? What could that be? So I said, I need to call the medical examiner. So I called the medical examiner and I had a long talk with her. And I said, tell me, what were these amounts? And he had 0.07% of alcohol. And I'm thinking, okay, he's 30, weighs 220 pounds, right? What's that, 4 beers? And I knew that he had gone into a restaurant in the mall that only had beer and wine licenses. So he wasn't a wine drinker. So I thought, okay, he had 4 beers. So I said to her, what was the metrogenine? What was this kratom? And she said, well, he had 1,063 nanograms. She goes, so that was an overdose. I said, well, how do you know that? I said, I believe you that figure's kind of high, but where are your figures? Where are you getting this? You can tell me, we can take Max's weight and height and what the percentage of alcohol, and we can narrow it down to about 4 beers. Tell me what he had in his system of kratom, because Max, he'd take a big teaspoon of it and then go along his way. So I couldn't even imagine him taking a cup or 2 cups of it. Nothing was making sense. I said, Jesus isn't making any sense. I need to investigate this. So I went on and started Googling. I saw American Kratom Association, and I wrote them. I went to their website, and I said, could you please tell me what's a normal dose? What should you not mix with? He didn't have packaging. I was just asking. I wasn't arguing with them. I thought maybe they would, the know-it-alls, right? And I said, my son died from this. And I immediately got an email that said, we've blocked you. You are not allowed to join the American Kratom Association. I'm like, what? What did I do? So then I started Googling more, and I found Dr. Christopher McCurdy, and I emailed him. And he emailed me immediately trying to get answers here. And he was very polite. He said, we've been studying it for years. We have learned a lot more. However, we still don't know where it's dangerous with a combination of anything. With alcohol, I would have no idea how much your son took with those figures. He said, the only study I have is out of Thailand, and that those were people that ate the leaves, and they had like 120 nanograms. So well, That's not what the US obviously takes, right? So he and I went back and forth a little bit, and he said, I'm so sorry I can't help you because kratom is not regulated. And like all other dietary supplements, they're not regulated. Well, that was the first I heard kratom's a dietary supplement? What? And then I just went down a rabbit hole after that.
Mm-hmm.
I started reading about Orrin Hatch and the Dietary Supplement Act of 1994. Then I see Mac Haddo. Oh, Mac Haddo, I remember that name. And it was just a big rabbit hole. And then someone recommended that I look up KDA, Kratom Danger Awareness. And I went in and I got really close with Wendy. And she'd lost her son and she had a lot of information. And that's how we're here today.
Max was a really young man. 30-year-old men shouldn't keel over and die in a grassy knoll there. Did he have any pre-existing conditions?
Absolutely none. He had no physical. He had his ADHD and his anxiety with that. In fact, his autopsy came back heart, liver, lungs, pancreas, kidneys. He didn't even have kidney stones. He didn't even have a gallbladder stone. His appendix, his heart was in perfect condition. He'd had a physical, probably less than a year before with a maintenance job he had. He was very healthy. That is what really got me going because dietary supplement, right? You have dietary supplement, which I associate with my vitamin K2, right? My vitamin D3.
Yeah.
So now I'm thinking to myself, how could this combination, what is in this, that this combination with 4 beers, it made no sense to me. I mean, that would be like me taking my vitamin D3, calcium, everything I take in the morning, and then going to a baseball game and maybe having a few beers and a couple hot dogs and dying. I mean, it didn't make any sense. That's where we are. It made no sense to me.
Yeah. And they did a full tox report?
They did a full tox report. In fact, after I started researching even more and talked to Dr. McCurdy, I called the medical examiner back. And I said, do you think you missed anything? Do you think the kratom he had in his system? I said, now I've been reading about metals or whatever. She said, no. She said, now if it had anything like a fentanyl or anything like that, we would have shown. She said, but I will tell you this, your son's results and 3 more, I'm going to send them out to another lab because we'll just double check. There's your son and 3 more people. So a couple weeks later, she called me and she said they had the exact same findings that we had. So that was 2 labs. And then I wrote to the county. I wanted to know what kind of records they could give me on kratom deaths. And they said, well, we can't give you any names or anything, but we can send you an Excel spreadsheet that shows deaths with kratom in their system. And I think there was 46 or 48 deaths in about 2.5, 3 years. And Max was on that. It went to the end of 2021. If you look at that list of those people, 3 of them only had kratom. Had only 3 in my county. So for them to say that it doesn't happen, that's just in my county, 3 people. But if you look at these people that had it in their system, that drug targets the most vulnerable. Those people, they had cocaine, fentanyl, oxycodone. A lot of them were probably drug addicts. And did they think that kratom was going to help them? Granted, they shouldn't have continued taking all those other drugs, but I do think it aims and is marketed to the most vulnerable.
Yeah, those numbers are about right. 3 kratom alone deaths out of 47, 48. It's usually between 90 to 95%. Had other drugs, but that is one of the most bothersome things, that the discourse is that only the kratom alone deaths are the ones we have to worry about. The other ones, they had other drugs in their system and for some reason they kind of deserve to die. And the interaction often between the kratom and the other drugs is actually what the deadly part is. But I know you have no reason to want to needlessly blame something for the cause of the death. You just want to know what the truth is. And do you think there's anything that was just missed?
Not with 2 labs. No, I do not. Again, she said to me, it would pull up anything. In fact, I looked at the toxicology report. There must have been a list of 45, 50 things they tested, negative, negative, negative. So it was tested for other items. And, the fact that they didn't even know a lot about kratom or metrogenine, and it pulled that, it pulled that up. So no, I do not believe there was anything else. I don't
Yeah.
believe both labs.
And obviously, probably the interaction between the alcohol and the kratom didn't help, but I've never heard anybody dying from 4 beers,
No, not a, let's face it, not a 220-pound, 30-year-old male. I mean,
Yeah.
come on. It's just not going to happen. I think what's even more frightening is that when I'm open minded, I believe that there are people that take it for pain. And that's really, really dangerous. You can't tell me all the kratom users, and it's not as many as, I don't believe it's as many as they say there are, but they're all not sober with no alcohol. Come on. They're going to weddings or going to baseball games. I mean, that's scary.
Yeah. The number of deaths kratom related I see with antihistamines over the counter is really high. So that's just such a common thing to take something for their allergies or take a Benadryl to help you sleep at night. Well, it seemed like pretty quickly you got blocked by the American Kratom Association. But how quickly did you realize that there was this big push from certain advocates and kratom lobbyists to like sort of engage in kratom death denialism, like they can't happen and there's never been a proven case? How soon did you realize that was going on?
Pretty quickly after the AKA blocked me, which that threw me off. So when I joined the KDA, and I said to Wendy, she and I were DMing, I said, geez, I said, all I did was ask a couple questions. AKA blocked me. And she goes, oh, that's not a surprise. So then I started going on Twitter. At the time, it's Twitter. And I would search kratom, and I just really started seeing all this really angry, like evil toward anybody that had even a little bit of anti-kratom. Yeah, that it was just insane. In fact, for a while, I was talking to a guy who he went back and forth pro. Yeah, I think he had his own little podcast or newspaper or something. And he and I were okay. We were DMing, and he was asking me about regulating or banning. And I just said something, some kind of opinion. And he just went off on me. And I was like, whoa, slow down. Isn't this a discussion? And after that, he blocked me. Since then, he's really derailed. I don't know what his issue is, but anyway, so I just started seeing that very quickly. If you posted anything, here's an example. One of the first I found out, a police department in Florida had posted something on their Facebook page of all the issues they were having with kratom, people overdosing and so forth. And I made a comment on their page. It was Lake Placid, Florida. And these people came out of the woodwork to go after me. They created really crazy terms for all of us, me, Wendy, other mothers. We were the grieving soccer moms. I mean, who does that? I'm not, that isn't even how I think. I just wanted to ask questions. That started happening really quickly. And just for my own mental health, every once in a while, I'd get off of Twitter. I'd back off from Facebook a little because it was just, what? I was still trying to deal with losing my son, and these people were going crazy.
Have you ever had a respectful, reasonable discussion with a pro-kratom person? You want to applaud that type of approach to discussing this?
Well, I think I've seen, a few people in KDA that I thought made comments, and I wasn't offended by their comments. And there is right now a guy that has, I believe his podcast is pro, and now he's written me 2 times. Yesterday, he left me an actual voice message DM. If I won't come on his show, he wants to promise that he's not there to go after me as anti. He just would like 2 sides to his podcast. If I wouldn't, do I know anyone that would come on his show that was even a former user that doesn't use now because they had issues? I haven't answered that one yet. I don't know if you get a little bit nervous. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to go on and then he's going to flip it around, right? So I haven't done anything yet with that. I did go into this kava bar my son frequented that his friend owned and tell them that Max died with what we estimate 4 beers and kratom, and they just were stunned. just shocked. And actually, I went into them because I liked the guy that owned it. He loved Max. Max loved him. And I actually suggested to him, listen, if you're going to sell that out of jars and put it in baggies, you need to start putting some stickers on the side of it. I mean, I just, I'm not here to beat people up. I'm just like, you need to get more information instead of just handing somebody a bag of 50 or 60 grams with no notes in it.
I know you talked to Peter Hayden for his Kratom piece on NPR. How was that like?
Oh, wow. Peter's such a nice guy. He actually came to my office, and that was it was an interesting, enjoyable kind of couple hours. He had hit South Florida, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Palm Beach, and gone on into all these different kava bars. And I think he was shocked. And on the way north, he'd stopped. He spoke to the family of the nurse. I don't know if you remember that, the nurse in Lake Worth who died. They had the loss.
Yes.
And he was stunned. Like, he brought in a menu from one of the kava bars. He said, look at the names of these drinks. They are coming after people. They're coming after the people, maybe addicts or whatever, and they're trying to entice them with this. I mean, we were looking at it. One had 9 grams of kratom in the drink. 9 grams. I remember Googling a couple months after Max, trying to get an idea of what 1,063 nanograms would be in street kratom, right? And some doctor came out, or scientists, and estimated that it could be between 20 to 30 grams. Now, that being said, somebody could walk into one of those kava bars, order 2 or 3 of those drinks, talking with their friends. Next, what do they have? 18, 24 grams of kratom in their system. That's frightening.
Yeah. And you're in Florida. What is it like to have all those kratom bars around?
They're all over the place. I think I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 within about a 9 or 10 miles of where I live. I think that's a lot. And I don't know a lot about kava, but if they'd probably stuck with kava, maybe, but maybe it's not the moneymaker. It's probably the kratom is a big moneymaker. So they started adding kratom to their menus, and maybe that's what's helping them stay in business. But I don't think it's a good idea.
Yeah, that's my understanding that at those bars, it's 80% or more is the kratom sales. Even where I live, we don't have kratom bars, but I believe there's more vape shops than liquor shops, and zoning rules on liquor stores, even though it's way more popular, and there's some restrictions to it, but I don't think there's the same restrictions on those vape shops that sell the kratom. But well, I know another reporters that you worked with was the Tampa Bay folks that did the Deadly Dose series. What was your perspective on that expose?
Well, the one journalist first contacted me in about June of 2022. And she was just curious for her own. She started seeing these kava bars. And then her friend said, oh, yeah, they sell kratom. And she's like, what's kratom? And so she thought maybe she could get another article, that she could do a story. So we spoke then. And a few months later, we spoke again. And then she called me and she said, Cindy, this has become much bigger than me. We're probably going to have in council advising us. We're going to have a political rep that knows the ropes of that. We're going to put 8 or 9 journalists. I mean, they were going to build a big team. So then she said, could I come over and talk to you? And she came over, and I got a little bit nervous about that because my former husband and my 2 other children were very nervous that Max's name and reputation they just didn't want that. As much as we all want to save people, that was our biggest concern because he was a quiet, private person. So she came over, and I was telling her that, and she's the one that said to me, Cindy, they are marketing to the most vulnerable people that have anxiety, people that have drug problems, people that, oh, this is the saving grace and it's all legal. Come in here. Don't ever feel that anything that you should be nervous about that, but I will respect you. So she did end up calling me about 3 or 4 weeks before they went to print. She said, we're going to go to print this day. She said, but I want you to know I just used vague things in the articles and didn't call out Max because I knew that you were very concerned about that. And I said, well, thank you. I appreciate that. So, but I really enjoyed them. They came all the way over from Tampa over to my office on the east coast of Florida.
Yeah, I think that 3-part series is probably the most comprehensive reporting that I've seen to date. Bloomberg just came out with a 30-minute documentary, but the Tampa Bay thing was multimedia. They had videos and stuff too. But I was still surprised. Nothing should surprise me, but the AKA just went all out to try to say it was fake news. And it was, I mean, you could maybe say the headline was a little sensational, deadly dose. But if you look at the reporting, it was all based on the facts. It wasn't some vendetta against kratom. It's people live in alternative realities or something.
Exactly. I mean, even Peter Hayden interviewed a gal that said, it saved my life. It saved my life. Hey, he was just showing both sides. I've never been one to say that I don't believe these people, that somebody suffered from a lot of pain. I see a lot of older people that the AKA promotes their little videos. But that being said, the science is not complete on it. Dr. McCurdy is the first to say that. He's been studying it for 20 years. They don't know what it can and should interact with. It's not safe, in my opinion.
Yeah. What do you see with the KCPA being implemented in Florida? And that's the Kratom Association's law that they wrote and then they lobby to have, usually at a state level, to pass and then implement. Have you seen any changes or improvements in Florida?
No changes or improvement. And I did see just the other day that Representative Castor of Florida is asking for a ban on it. And she was quoting the Tampa Bay article. My opinion of the KCPA, it should actually be renamed KVPA. It's a Vendor Protection Act. And the original writers of it were the AKA. And we all know that Mac Harrell goes all the way back to the 80s in politics. He was part of Orrin Hatch's little team. So he knows the ins and outs of government. He knows who to go to. Let's do this. And feeling that all these bills would stop it from being banned and it would work. And if you just read what these KCPAs, it's just it scratches your head. First of all, its agricultural department has to keep an eye on it. How are they going to do that? It's supposed to be 21 and over. It's not supposed to have any metals and so forth. Who's going to test that, Charlie? Who's going out there? Who's going into these stores? I don't think they work. I don't think they could work. I don't believe in them. I think it was just another ploy for the AKA. I thought it's just another scare tactic or a helpful tactic for them.
It's a way to say it is regulated and don't look anymore. It's regulated. And you can see behind the scenes when the KCPAs are passed, they really lobby hard for the enforcement agency to have a really limited budget. I think in Florida, the agricultural department was asking for $1 million. The AKA always looks to Utah and, well, Utah does it on $80,000 a year. So that just makes it a toothless kind of almost a Trojan horse almost.
What would you do what would you even do with $1 million? I mean, think of Florida. Florida is probably one of the top kratom states, right? Just the South Florida counties, they're Kava Sutra, they're all over the place. What would $1 million do? Let alone 80,000. You're not going to do anything with that. So I don't know. I don't pay attention to the KCPA. They do nothing. And maybe people are starting to wise up to them.
Well, what do you think about the FDA, how they're handling things?
Well, I'm not happy with them. Not for the same reason the AKA isn't happy with them. I'm not happy with them. There's no doubt about it. They have known for, oh my God, years that kratom probably poses issues and problems, that people have died. I think what was that, 2016, when the DEA and FDA came out and said they weren't going to, regulate it or schedule it, there was somebody in politics that got to them. Come on. It's all who you know. That bothers me that the FDA, I spoke to a person from the FDA about a year ago because our group, the KDA, sends in their reports. You can send in a report. If somebody died from something, you file that report. And they contacted me. And I said, well, what are you going to do about this? They said, just in our group alone, we have hundreds of people that died with kratom in their system. And who knows how many just had kratom? I said, I don't know that figure. She goes, well, we're looking at everything. And I can't really tell you what that was. That was a year and a half ago that I spoke to her. Maybe they do have something going on. Maybe they're waiting. I don't know what they're waiting on, but I think I believe that dietary supplements need to be regulated somehow.
Yeah, it's not just kratom. The whole sector is set up just ridiculous. They don't have to prove their safety. The AEA has to prove that they're dangerous. And I don't believe in overregulation, but the flip of that is underregulation doesn't do the public any good. Just letting the corporations have access to the marketplace without guardrails. There's just all this skepticism about vaccines and doctors and all this just anti-establishment kind of mentality now. Tell us about your work with the KDA.
Well, it's a phenomenal group. I hand a lot to Wendy, the founder. She lost her only child. She started this group, and there's over 2,000 members now. I think when I joined, which was January or February 2022, maybe a couple hundred. It's come a long way. I think what's so sad is how many people are still joining now that lost children or spouses within the past few weeks, few months. That part is just mind boggling. It's a good group. The pro people really come after Wendy, come after the group. They come after all of us. And I think everybody has different opinions. Most of it is, we're definitely anti-kratom in the sense that this has taken our children. But I just think that there's different people in the group that feel absolute outright ban and absolute maybe regulating. And not knowing, not being part of FDA, those are all very confusing topics. If you search control/scheduling, then you search regulating and you search banning. All of those things just take years. They all have to have almost a complete science. I do think it needs off the shelves. It needs out of the gas stations. It needs out of the kava bars. It needs out of the convenience stores, and it needs to stop being sold online. Could they ever regulate it in the sense of the way they did cannabis? I don't know. It's much more powerful. I don't know, but that's not my job. That's their job. I do know that it's really bad that you can go into gas stations, convenience stores, and kava bars all in my county, and it's everywhere. And I think that's dangerous.
What do you think is the most realistic and feasible next step to improve kratom regulations?
Well, I think we have to get more politicians on our side in the KDA group. And Wendy's working really hard on that. She knows a lot. She's out of New York. A lot of people now that Representative Castor out of Florida gives me hope. That's why the AKA has been so successful, because Mac Haddow has politicians that he knows. He knows how to write bills. He knows that. He goes back to the Orrin Hatch days. He's got 40 or 50 years on us as far as understanding government. We need some real political help for us to try to understand more of the process, because it has to get out of the stores. It's got to get out of the kava bars. More people they're just going to keep dying till they can figure this out. But it took us 70 or 80 years for cannabis, medical marijuana.
I think for there to be a well-regulated kratom industry, it would require the industry itself to push that. They're the ones with the money and with the lobbyists. So by them pushing the self-regulation where the kratom industry itself certifies certain vendors as good, which just leads to pay to play problems. The options that we have right now is either a local ban or the KCPA, which is basically like the Wild West still. It's either ban it or barely any regulation, because the AKA, like, kind of annoying that they just push. If there's anything negative about a kratom incident, it's because it was adulterated. Like,
right.
Pure kratom itself alone never causes harm, which is just not true.
No.
It's just false. It's just false.
I follow this guy on TikTok, the Kratom Warrior. And boy, he really comes out. And he has a lot of people now that follow him and comment on how extremely addicting it became. It almost ruined his life. He talks about the withdrawals, and then people will comment to him about what their withdrawals were, and they were in the hospital for a week. And you can't tell that to any pro kratom people. They don't believe it. That's not true. It's just a matter of time that something will happen with them.
Yeah, the focus of our podcast, we can attest to it. It's awfully addictive for some of us, and many of us think it's worse than alcohol or other drugs that we've taken. And yeah, the withdrawals can be really bad. And it's not just extracts. That's the other thing. Everything is blamed on the extracts. There's plenty of people who have 100 grand powder habits, and there's some people that get pretty badly addicted doing 15 grams a day.
I agree.
The individual variability, the individual response, there's a lot of variance.
That's what Dr. McCurdy also said to me. He said to try to look at what dosage or what a lethal or dangerous combination would be. He said that actually depends also upon the metabolism, male, female, weight, what their metabolism is. And we see that now, like you just said, there are people 100 grams a day of the powder, and they're still going on.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually in a Discord group that they didn't know. I was kind of in the back door. And these people were consumed with talking about the kratom, which kratom they bought, the green, the white, the red. And I was staying quiet because they'd throw me out if they knew who I was. But they were saying, oh, the only way I can sleep at night, I have a couple big glasses of wine, throw back 9 grams. And I'm thinking, oh my God, please don't do that. And they're writing that every day. That's what he's doing every day. So why hasn't nothing's happened to him, right? And I don't know, it's mind boggling.
Well, we try to lighten things up at the end of our interviews, even though we've had a really heavy discussion here. But what do you do for fun?
What do I do for fun? Well,
yes.
I haven't had a lot of time over the past 40 years working, but I took the summer. I spent a little bit over a month in Ohio, went back and saw some sisters, saw some old childhood friends. I like doing that. I came back here. I have one grandchild. She's going to be 10. I love visiting her now, and they live about 45 minutes north of me. So even though 45 miles doesn't seem like a lot when I was working full time, I didn't see her like I'd like to. So I'm just trying to find my way. I think I'm probably going to go back and take some classes. I don't live far from a local college. I know I'll have to keep busy. I can tell that right now.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm helping a couple brokers out, yacht brokers, just for something to do. They're getting contracts and things like that. And then I told the company I retired from, they asked if I wanted to work the Fort Lauderdale Boat Show at the end of October, November. And I said, sure, I'll do that. I'm just going to do things like that. I do help to travel. My girlfriend in Arizona invited me for Thanksgiving. I might go out to Arizona for Thanksgiving.
I think you're a generation or two ahead of me. Did you ever see any concerts back in the day, the original Hall of Fame bands?
Let's see. I saw all the original. I saw Led Zeppelin in Cleveland, Ohio. In fact, I saw so many concerts, I don't know where to begin. Cat Stevens, Billy Preston, Leon Russell. I saw David Bowie twice, Elton John twice. Like I said, Led Zeppelin. Oh my God, Bonnie Raitt, I've seen her 4 times. Billy Joel. I was a concert junkie in my teens and 20s.
Yeah.
And I didn't live far from Cleveland. So, you get the best. And like this summer, my old childhood friend that I met when I was 3, and we're 67 now, she bought us tickets and we saw the Rolling Stones in Cleveland in June. So that was my first time I got to see the Stones. So that was well worth it.
Yeah, I saw Bowie in '90. That was a fun tour. And I've seen Bonnie Raitt a bunch of times. She always does a good show.
She's great, isn't she?
Yeah.
First time I saw her, I was 16. So
okay.
She was, I think she's about 7 years. So she was 23. And it was in a tiny little little auditorium, college auditorium outside of Cleveland that housed about 2,500, 3,000 people. I felt like I could reach out and touch her. So that was great. So I do enjoy her. That's for sure.
Well, is there anything you'd like to add that we didn't cover before we say goodbye?
Let me see. I'll probably be disheartened with the AKA and Mac Haddow for a while because I think he's taken this whole thing personally. And it makes me wonder, did he take it personally? Like, why is he in the game anyways? He's almost 80. He took over AKA from Susan Ash. If you read that story, that's mind boggling. So part of me, I still wonder about AKA. And I think you're correct that if they need to come around a little bit, they'd do better if they promoted some kind of regulation. I mean, but instead, all they do is fight and get nasty and block people. I'm blocked from all the AK, Facebook, X. I don't know. I never did anything to them, but they blocked me.
Yeah, I think it would be better for the industry. Part of the political culture today of never say you're wrong,
Right.
And present this picture that there's no kratom deaths, that kratom is addictive as Diet Coke. And they have a lot of scientists that work for the industry that are technically the science is correct, but it's framed in favorable terms for the industry. And the tobacco industry did this for a long time. Many industries do this. They're not alone. Matt Cotto is interesting. It can't be just the money, and it must be some point of pride. I think it is an extension of him passing the Deshay Act. I find that the tactics very disagreeable, like demonizing the FDA and just making up stuff like there's some kind of wild conspiracy, so unrational.
Well, they come from both sides, and that's where I get a little confused. And I'll just make this quick. They can be anti-government, anti-FDA. Oh, big pharma wants this. We don't like big pharma. But I'm going to bet on something that most of them, and maybe Mac Haddo, is on some kind of high blood pressure medicine, high cholesterol. Is anybody a diabetic? So you can't have it both ways. You can't hate big pharma and government and take any of those things. Don't go to your doctors, get off your insulin shots, because that doesn't make any sense. You like their help sometimes, but you don't like their help other times. It doesn't make any sense.
A lot of them are anti-police, but there will be the first people that will call 911 if their loved one is harmed. They want the police to help them. Many of them always have lawsuits are bad, but if they had a personal injury against them because of a defective product or somebody broadsided them with a car, they'll be calling an attorney and filing a lawsuit immediately, because those are the tools we have in America to try to find justice.
Anyways, I don't know. I think we've come a little bit further in the 2.5 years since I lost Max. I hope. But we'll see.
Well, thank you for coming on. I do not like to see that these stories of people that have died of kratom-related deaths to be swept under the rug. I think that's a great tragedy. And then to have this whole big industry run this campaign of disinformation saying that it's fake news, I think that's really wrong. So thank you for sharing Max's story, and hopefully we honored his memory.
Thank you, Charlie. You have a wonderful day.
You too.
Bye-bye.